growing up in an Afro-Caribbean household, food was love. You know, when people love you, they cook for you. And not eating food was an insult. And they loved me so much that I just ate. And even as a young child, just really chubby, really obese into adulthood. I soared up to 396 pounds. That was the heaviest that I was. And I just felt horrible.
More than 73% of Americans have overweight or obesity, while more than 12% have food insecurity. America is getting heavier, sicker, and more isolated from each other every day. Our motto, Move, Eat, Give, reflects our belief that virtually every problem in America could be fixed if we took better care of ourselves and took better care of each other. Welcome to Interrupt Hunger's Move, Eat, Give podcast, where we talk with experts in exercise as medicine, food as medicine, and food insecurity. And understanding that knowledge isn't always enough to help you lose weight. Every other episode showcases someone who's lost at least 10% body weight to share exactly how they did it. Interrupt Hunger is a 501c3 nonprofit which helps you lose weight while feeding the hungry. Bring our free 12-week weight loss challenge and donate your weight program to the places you live, work, and pray. We fund our mission with sales from our Move, Eat, Give bracelets and clothing, so please visit us at interrupthunger.org to show your support. 50 meals are donated for every item sold to the nation's largest hunger relief network. So you get to look good while feeling good. Now on to today's episode.
Hey everyone, it's Jolly here with Interrupt Hunger. Thanks for joining us again. We've got a How I Did It this week with Kim Greer. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jolly. Happy to be here.
Pretty cool. I've been looking forward to today. So you've got a really neat story. You've been on quite the journey for a while, and thanks for sharing that with us today. So let's just dive into it. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about your family dynamics and work dynamics, so somebody listening might be able to say like, oh my gosh, this person I'm listening to right now is just like me. So yeah, what's your family and work dynamics like?
Now, let's see. I grew up in an Afro-Caribbean family. Mom is from the Caribbean. Dad is from Mississippi. Let's see. I have one child, married when I was really young, 18, and worked for a pharma company based out of the Midwest. I've lived in the Midwest my entire life. So we are big eaters. So food is love here in the Midwest, and there is a lot of it. Chicago specifically, Chicago-style pizza, hot dogs. So that's what we know, and that's what we love.
That's fantastic. It keeps you warm during those cold winters.
It's been warm for lots of years, yes.
So why don't you just start us on this journey to better health? Why don't you take us back as far back as you want to go, and just kind of tell us what it was like struggling with weight, struggling with health, up until your why happened. And I say that, like, everybody that I've talked to that's lost really any sizable amount of weight has some type of why. It was like a switch that was flipped that just made everything from that point forward just different. So yeah, why don't you start us with your journey?
So growing up in an Afro-Caribbean household, food was love. When people love you, they cook for you. And not eating food was an insult. And they loved me so much that I just ate. And even as a young child, just really chubby, really obese into adulthood. I soared up to 396 pounds. That was the heaviest that I was. And I just felt horrible. And I was around people, my grandparents. I grew up with my grandparents. And even though they cooked and cooked and cooked and ate, they were not large people. I'm like, how does this happen? At any rate, my grandmother she had gestational diabetes with her last child. And I remember her saying to me one day, she goes, I don't want you to be diabetic. She goes, you have to do something. And I was like, okay, so went on lots of bad diets. Slim fast was a thing. 70s baby. So when I was growing up, I did every diet known to man and would lose, 10 or 15 pounds. I was like, I did it. And then I would eat again. And, the 10 to 15 pounds, I gained back 18. So it's like, it was all null and void. And so I had to take control of something. So even when I was in college, just kind of the yo-yo dieting, back and forth, up and down, and just felt so winded, like going upstairs. I just couldn't do it anymore. And bad needs and not being able to have the quality of life that I wanted. And so there were just a lot of things, a lot of triggers that for me over the years, it just kind of, these sensors were like, you got to do something, because if you don't do something, you're not going to be around to enjoy life as you know it. So I said, all right. So in 2018, I started a Weight Watchers program. I'd done Weight Watchers before, and I'd done it with, some girlfriends in college. And of course, when you're in college, there's the weekends where you binge, on pizza and beer and all the other junk food that's out there. But when I got older, of course, being able to have access to more money and things like that, healthier eating was an option for me. So in 2018, I got serious. And again, remember those words of my grandmother. And my grandmother died in 2010. My maternal grandmother that raised me. And so in 2018, I took a vow that I was going to do this for her, my grandma Ellen.
Uh-huh.
I said, I'm going to lose this weight. So in 2018, I did Weight Watchers, and I lost 120 pounds in maybe 14 months.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was about portion control. I was eating entirely too much. It's like they taught you about the size of your fist, make certain, that 3 ounces of meat and that type of thing. And I then started falling in love with exercise. The movement became easier. Obviously, when you have less weight to move, it becomes easier to kind of move. Got into things like running. But at that point, my knees were so shot from carrying the extra weight. But I still did it anyhow. So I was out there on that track, and I was like, I got to move. And so for me, I had this whole movement that I did called the Move It generation, that I had some girlfriends, and I get out on that track at 4:30 in the morning, and we get out there. And if it took us, an hour and a half to do 2 miles, whatever. And then, of course, it became faster and faster. And then I started running, and it just became invigorating. So even though I had the pain, and which I still have in my knees, there was just something about just that burst of energy that it gives me, that it gave me. And it's life for me to be able just to move.
Yeah.
Fewer pounds. So I've lost over 200 pounds. I've lost actually 200 plus pounds, but I just feel like a new person. It's just life for me. And sure, 2018, I lost 120 pounds or so. I still hadn't lost enough. And so I had a gastric process. So it's called the VSG, vertical sleeve gastrectomy. So your stomach's about the size of a football. And so I had it down. So it's the size of a banana. One of the things I was warned about, that gastric surgery is not, if it's all. And I'm just like, it has to be. They're like, no, your stomach can stretch. It is a muscle. It can stretch. So I had the weight off since then. So I lost about another 100 pounds or so with the process. And so again, it was kind of a learning curve, because at that point, there are certain things you can't eat. There are things that make you sick, And again, with your stomach being reduced in size, once you eat too much, you feel the effects of it. So that whole process was a mind shift for me, because you want to get the proper nutrients in at this point, because your stomach doesn't absorb nutrients the way that it did previously.
Let me ask you. So you said that some foods you can't eat. Talk to us about that.
It's just everyone's different as how the gastric process works. Like for example, I can't process chicken, and it's just the texture of chicken. Don't know why, but my body doesn't like it, so I stay away from it. Things that are tough, like I don't eat beef, so I do a lot of fish, and things that are moist. So I'm pretty much pescatarian. I will eat chicken at some points, but it has to be very, very moist chicken. So I'll never eat a chicken breast or anything like that. Chicken salad, I can do things like that. So just kind of picky about what I eat. And really, for me, it's getting the veggies in first, and then getting some protein.
Yeah. So let me go back just a little bit. So your grandma talked to you, gave you those words back in 2010,
Yeah.
and then 2018 was really the turning point for you. What was it in 2018 that changed?
So I was told by my physician that my physician sent me to an orthopedic surgeon because my knees were so shot. And they said that I needed knee replacement surgery. And they said because of my age, I'll be 51 this year. So I don't know how old I was in 2018, but they said it was too early for me to have knee replacement surgery.
Yeah.
And I said, of course we can do it. They said, but you're going to need it again. And I'm like, why? They're like, knee replacement surgeries only last so long. And they said, I would suggest that you lose some weight. And I'm just like, yeah, I've been hearing that my whole life. They said, well,
Yeah.
I suggest you take heed.
Wow.
And because I had to point, I had so many, like Synvisc is a gel injection, like cortisone. So I had that injections and that type of thing. And they don't like to do that too much for the pain, basically. I mean,
Oh,
even walking upstairs was painful. And so I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I need to do something and take control of my health. You don't want people are like, oh, I'll take the stairs. I'm like, I'll take the elevator. I really wanted to take control of that. It's like embarrassment and shame, like you're just going to the second floor and you're like, oh, my knees hurt so bad. And it's just like, by the time you actually go around to get the elevator, the people that you were with, they're already in the room, if you were in a meeting. And I'm like getting up here, I'm like, what room are we in again? And so it was just like, I'm going to be able to, jet up those stairs as well.
yeah. It's you mentioned about the difficulty of exercising with obesity. I have to admit, like once upon a time, I would look at somebody with obesity and just think like why don't you just like walk?
Got there, yeah.
And it took a while for me to really understand like just walking hurts, just
Yeah.
move hurts, just so much of life hurts,
Yeah.
and you can't start with exercise. You really have to start with your diet or medications or surgery or something like that to get some of that weight off to make it manageable, to make the pain manageable for exercise. So I think that's an important point for folks listening to hear.
I remember, hearing that weight is lost in the kitchen first, right? It's really about
Sure.
you changing your mindset and about how you eat. Because truly, for me, when I started once upon a time, it was guzzling that water and that full feeling, and then just starting to have the portion control and eating less and actually feeling better. Because when you see that scale and the number going down, I think you're encouraged. And then once you start, even if you've only lost 10 pounds, you're like, wow, 10 pounds. And then you feel motivated to start moving. And that kind of gets you in the right direction. And even though it might be water weight, that's okay. I mean, but when that 10 pounds turns into, 12 pounds, then turns into 14 pounds, and it prolongs over time, I think that mind shift and mindset becomes, I got this, I can do this. And you put in the work and you start, you know, even if it's a block, if it's 2 blocks, that becomes a mile, that eventually becomes, 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, then, I think that's where you start. Start small and, get toward that end goal of wherever you need to be.
Yeah, it's a daily pressure.
Yeah.
It's just a tiny, tiny, little bit more every day, and it's amazing how far you can go in just no time at all. So another thing you said, I think it's really important for folks to understand. So you had this mind shift in 2018, and you lost over 100 pounds, and that's uh you know
Golly, I'm a great.
oh 120, yeah, so 120 pounds. Yeah, thanks. Don't want to miss that. But you maybe you hit a plateau and
Yeah.
then that took you so you could do so everybody's body's different. Everybody's physiology is so completely different. And just because I did something, if you're, anybody listening, just because you can do something doesn't mean it's going to be the same for other people out there. So everybody needs varying levels of health because
Mhm.
they have different hormones, different neuro
Sure.
levels of neurotransmitters. Everybody's completely unique. And for most people, it'll take a combination of things, healthy eating, and exercise, maybe meds, maybe surgery, maybe coaching, maybe physician, something, but it'll take a lot. So there's this idea that weight loss is just a matter of mindset. And if you have obesity, you're just not in the right mindset yet. And that's completely wrong. And we really got to work to break those biases and stigmas. Yeah. So after you lost the 120, before you had the surgery, did you just feel like you hit a plateau and you were struggling to keep it going after that?
I did, because I felt like I had the right recipe. I knew what to do, and I'm like, nothing's happening anymore. And I felt like I picked it up a notch. I started doing this, I started mixing up my repertoire of what I was doing. And it was still just like, oh, a month had passed and I'd lost, a pound and a half. I'm like, what happened? But
Yeah.
also I realized that, when you're severely obese, you lose weight faster, right? But my body just was not responding to things the same way that it was. And I was just
Yeah.
like, this sucks. at a really good clip because it took me about 14 months. I mean, and I felt like that was fast. But
That
again,
is.
it was the portion control because, you know, having 3 or 4 slices of pizza in one sitting versus having maybe, one or maybe just having the topping on the pizza and cutting out the carbs. It started doing that kind of thing. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm full. And really, I'm like water, guzzle, guzzle, guzzle. There was a point that I drank a gallon of water a day. So I was in the bathroom a lot. And so there were things. And so I was doing mind Jedi trick. And I was like, I'm doing all the things I was doing in the very beginning where was losing the weight rapidly. And those things weren't working, near the end of the 14 months. And so I
Yeah.
just remember talking to my PCP and he's like, well, I'm certain that you could do some surgery. And he goes, it's invasive, obviously. And I'm just like, all right, tell me more. And there are certain types of surgeries that are more invasive than others. I'm like, I don't want to do anything that's, like they have something called a duodenal switch where they switch things. I'm like, I don't want to do anything like that. And he's like, there's another process. I can't remember what it is now. Like stomach stapling. I'm like, no, I'm not doing any of that. And he told me about this VSG process. And he's like, the surgery time is about 2 hours. I was like, okay. And, as I kind of did some of my own research, back with lots of questions, that is how I decided on that process. And he's like, that you can still gain weight back. I'm like, yep, trying to. I'd come this far with the whole Weight Watchers process. And I felt like at this point, I understood what I needed to do in order to maintain the weight loss and having the right mix of foods and foods that, I liked and really ensuring that I was not having this whole plate full of meat and this tiny portion of vegetables and flipping it the other way around. And so again, it was understanding that and making certain that I was going to adhere to that. So
All right.
in that process, lots of visits with psychiatrists that talked about what were your eating habits like growing up. Did you eat at a table with your parents or did you just kind of eat wherever and whenever? And I felt like, we ate as a family together at the table, but I also did a lot of snacking throughout, the evening and that type of thing.
Yeah. So I'm sure that was critical, actually getting some help to change your eating behaviors and being much more intentional about it. Uh, did you go? Were you required to go speak to a psychologist by your insurance?
Yes.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah.
So there were actually several visits. And that's one of the things that, you almost have to pass and qualify to just talk about your history. And even though I had lost the 120 pounds prior, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this under control. They still wanted to dig into your past and understand how you had got even to the point where I was 396 pounds. And I'm like,
Mm.
I'm not anymore. They're like, yeah, we understand that, but you were.
Yeah.
And you lost this weight. So how did you get there? Why did you get there? Was food a comfort for you? And, so they asked a lot of questions that kind of brought back triggers for me. Food was love is kind of how I started this. And it was just like, you went to visit family. Oh, we baked a cake for you. And it's just like, oh, eat more, eat more. I'm just like, I really don't want any more, but it's good. So just being able to be satisfied, with Weight Watchers, one of the things that they taught us was the BLT, bite, lick, and taste as we track food. And that was as I journal food, what did you eat today? So every bite that you had, if you just had a bite of a sandwich, make certain that you're recording that because you're like, oh, I didn't eat anything all day. It's like, oh, I had a bite of that. I had a look at that. I had a taste of that. And that actually counts. Calories count. So being intentional and writing things down for me, I'm just like, oh, I haven't had anything to eat all day. It's like, you had a lot to eat. So you had,
You don't realize it. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Just curious, how did you feel going into counseling? Like somebody telling you have to do this. Was it nervous at all? Were you looking forward to it? And did your
oh,
views
I,
change through the process?
I felt like I don't need this. I already lost 120 pounds. You don't need to tell me what to do. But I felt like it unpacked a lot. And I'm a big advocate of talking to anyone if you're going through something in life. There are people that can help you just by literally asking you questions, thinking about things in a different way than you think about it. It's like, yeah, I got this. No, I didn't got this. I was missing the mark on a lot of things because I didn't know my why behind why I had gotten, so large. I didn't understand, some of the things that I was going through. And so as they were unpacking and asking questions, I was like, oh, maybe that's why I'm discovering things about me. And it kind of just helped me learn more about Kim in general. So it was actually a cool process. because the food and the weight was one thing, but just other external factors. I think it helped me kind of self-actualize in other areas of life.
Yeah, sure. You have, there's been neat studies done that if you take identical twins, same genetic makeup, and you raise them in different environments, and one has a lot of means and they're educated and life is just easier versus this other person that's, born into just or facing so many more stressors in life. I think it's really important for folks to understand the more stresses that you have piling up and up and up, it makes it so much harder to fight through those cravings and healthy choices. And it doesn't matter if we're talking social determinants of health or maybe
Yeah,
relationships or whatever it may be. A stress is a stress, and the more stress in your life, the harder it is to make healthy choices.
agreed. Totally aligned with that. And then I can confirm some of that just from being able to speak with someone that things that I didn't consider stressors were actually things that drew me closer to that back potato chips.
Um, yeah. So, what about now? So it's been a bit since your surgery,
Mhm.
and you've maintained this weight loss for quite some time. What's your eating style like? Talk to us like a typical day. What's one of your go tos for breakfast, maybe lunch and snacks?
See, I am almonds, love almonds. Always have a bag of almonds somewhere. They're just a great pick me up in the morning. Almonds, boiled eggs. That's a good breakfast starter for me. And also, I'm guilty sometimes of no breakfast at all. But I do try to be intentional. Just, I think, like with a hybrid schedule, being able to work from home sometimes, it's just like you just start and dig in the day.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, let me get my almonds. And, you got to call. Let me get to my almonds and get in between. So for me, it's like I always have almonds somewhere.
Okay.
If they're, and there's, Emerald makes these almonds. Some are chocolate dusted. They're 100 calorie. And so just a good source of protein and, gets me up and going. And there are other days where I just have a big bag of almonds from Costco where I'm just like, depends on the day. I'm just like, I need a pick me up. So for me, almonds are life. Let's see. Lunch, it just depends. If I'm in the office, we got a great cafeteria, lots of choices there. So I'm a soup kind of girl, especially in the Midwest here in October, getting kind of chilly. Soups are always good for me. Salads, always want to try to get some protein in though. If I have, salad from the salad bar, I'm not big on chicken, as I said before, but I might throw some tofu in there or something just to make certain I'm getting my protein in. And dinner, touch and go. I'm not really great. I eat the same thing over and over. I just repeat my meals because I know what I can tolerate and what my body likes. But again, I'm really good for fish. And if I do like meal prep, which I often do on weekends, I'll just go ahead and get my air fryer out. And, if I'm doing lemon pepper, whatever variety of, if it's sole, I like sole, go ahead and get it prepped for the week. And dinner is easy. And I'm not much of a cook. My husband cooks, but I still steam my veggies. We don't eat the same way, but I steam my veggies, and he might have some. He's just like, oh, it's really bland. I'm like,
But
but again,
I think
it's what I tolerate, so it works for me.
yeah, I like that you said meal prep because some people I talk to, I'll hear them say like, "Oh, I don't have time to meal prep." Like if you just like take the time, take a little bit extra time up front, saves you so much time during the week. And like anybody can eat healthy if like everything in life is going as it's supposed to.
Mhm.
It's when, life happens and schedules change and you're rushing around and maybe there's some added stressors during the day. That's when it becomes really, really hard to eat healthy. And if you've got something prepped and you have to stay late at work or you got to get kids to practice or
Yeah,
you're trying to get off the book club, whatever it is, if you've got something prepped, ready to go that's healthy, and it just makes all the difference in the world.
it does. Taking the time on the front end to make certain that on the back end that you're good. I mean, as you would with anything else, if you're getting clothes ready for work for the week, whatever, just making certain that, your clothes are laundered, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
taking clothes to the cleaners, just making certain that you're ready for a work week ahead. I feel
Yeah.
like it's a must, and I usually don't meal prep anything except dinner. All the other meals, got my nuts, boiled eggs, and if, I'm at work, kind of whatever's in the cafeteria that kind of fits the bill, I do.
Yeah, I gotcha. That helps a lot. So, let's talk about your current exercise routine. Like,
Yeah.
what's a typical week look like? And if you could say what time of the day and what day of the week, try to, don't go super deep, but just kind of what's a typical week look like for you?
I'm an early. So I'm usually up at like 4:30 a.m. That's my body clock. It's so funny. Everyone teases me, my family growing up with my grandparents are like, oh yeah, you woke up early in the morning. So now that's you. And that really is. I'm just like, it's 4:30. Who's sleeping at this time? And so I'm like, I'm up. I might as well be productive. So in the warmer months, I go out and exercise out in the neighborhood. So I walk, I run, that type of thing. As getting darker here in the mornings and got coyotes and things like that near me, I stay inside and exercise. And I have so many gym memberships, but I don't know. For me, like getting up that early, it's just easier to be at home and just moving it is that's my kind of motto. Move it, the move it movement, and just move. So if I'm at home, I have a bunch of exercise equipment that I just create routines. So now I'm into strength training. So I just get out there and do whatever I need to do to make certain that that's happening. So 4:30, 5 o'clock, I am there doing whatever I need to do to make certain that I'm trying to stay physically fit. And again, I don't want to be probably got as so from 396 and my lowest weight was probably like 151. And so a little bit bigger now, so about 160 or so. I'm good with that. But again, just making certain that I am staying toned and lifting. In the summertime, I'm more about cardio though. In the wintertime, I'm a crybaby about the cold.
No, I get it. I live in South Texas, so I totally get that. It's funny.
And so don't have as much running. But again, I'd say maybe 1 to 2 times a week that I would go to a physical gym and utilize a treadmill. I don't have a treadmill anymore. I've got an elliptical, but just to get some running in, because again, it's just so invigorating to me. And it just gives me just that feeling like, oh, I worked out. I did this and the sweat and, that's the drips of sweat. That's gold for me. And so I love that. Again, just the way that it makes me feel like I feel accomplished. And for me, at one point, I felt like you had to sweat it out in order to feel like you're really done something. I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like, maintenance and being able to feel strong is my goal. And feeling like I can move a car, that's how I want to feel, that I'm strong and I feel fit.
I love that. How do you feel if, for some reason you have to miss a day of exercise?
I feel like I make it up. So if I have to go into the office, I'm taking the stairs. I'm walking up to the fifth floor. I'm going,
Like that.
whatever I need to do. I'm just getting it in however I have to get it in. So if I have to take a call, I'm walking, taking a call.
Mm.
So I feel like there's like really no reason if I don't have formal exercise time that I can still make certain that I implement that while I'm in the office, out and about. If I'm going to the grocery store, I'm parking the furthest away so I can walk and do that.
Notice.
So I'm gonna get
Yeah.
it in however I need to. So if I'm not up at 4:30, which I am, because I can't sleep past that time, but if I, for some reason, skip doing that, I would do things throughout the day to make certain that I was getting my steps in and, you know, utilizing whatever mode I needed to here this week in New York. It's just like, oh, this is XYZ, miles away. I'm like, let's walk. I'm like, we'll get lost along the way, but let's walk and make certain that we get it in however. So
Oh, I love this. Yeah, there's so many things you just said that I'm such a fan of. I try to avoid an elevator at all costs, and I have my own little personal rule that I am not taking the elevator if I'm like 6 floors or less.
all right.
And and you almost never see anybody on the stairs. Almost, and I can tell you just yesterday, if I had a few appointments with customers and going to the grocery store. Probably I know for a fact just yesterday, 4 different times, I intentionally sought out the farthest car from the door, and I wanted to park like one space farther than that. Yeah, it kind of makes it a game. I
Yep.
mean, gamifying things without an app, but it really does. And some folks think you have to do everything, like spend an hour in the gym and sweat it out. Like, you don't have to do that. You get like just what you said, calories count. Those BLTs, bites, looks, and tastes. Like,
Yeah,
exercise counts too. Like,
absolutely.
if you do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunch, 10 minutes, on a call later in the afternoon, like, that's 30 minutes.
Yeah,
It adds up. It's not like an hour, is better than, a bunch of little exercise snacks. So yeah, you learned a lot over this.
yeah, absolutely. Get in however you can, whenever you can.
Very good. So last question I want to ask you. You've been so generous sharing a lot. A lot of people, some people don't like talking about this stuff. So I really appreciate it because somebody out there is listening to you, Cam, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, okay. So if she could do it, like, this is the motivation I need.
Yeah, absolutely.
If somebody came up to you and just heard about your weight loss journey and journey to health, and they say, like, where do I start? What are some tips that you might be able to share with them?
Let's see, where do I start? Well, I think one of the things is you have to want it, right? Because I think people say all the time, oh, yeah, I want to do that. And they become laissez-faire, you know? And I think you have to be very intentional. And one of the things that I learned, if you want something, write it down. You know, uh, if you, I can't, I can't think of the scripture right now, but just having a Bible-based belief, write the vision down, make it plain. And so that was my vision. That's something that I wrote down, even for work. When I wanted to do different things at work, I wrote it down in my vision book. And these are things that I want. And so when I wrote that and saw that I want to be a certain size, then I was like, whoa, I'm crossing that out because I already am. So I had to write things down. I think it's Jeremiah. It's the verses, without a vision, people perish. And so without a vision, Kim would no longer be able to attain the goal that Kim wanted. So I had to write it down in order to make it real for me. So I would advise anyone, if it's something you want, write it down. What's your plan of action? Because if you don't have a plan, you can't move forward because things just start happening. Then, it's like, oh, this happened and life happens. As I would say, life is lifing no matter what, right? So in order for your plans to take form and take focus, I feel like you'd have to write it down to make it plain. And that's what I did in 2018, and it was like a lot of painstaking. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I want to lose weight. As I started writing things down in my journal, it's just like, how did I get here? Why did I get here? That kind of thing. I don't want to be here. It was like a thing of depression, really. And so it's a good release to write these things down. And then, Weight Watchers, that helped me. And I started feeling great. And so my journal entries became different. My vision was a lot more different. It's just like, I want to be able to, walk a mile. And it was like, you need to be more specific. As we learn, with work, writing SMART goals. Yeah, walk a mile. That's great. Now it was a timed mile. And it was, I want to be able to do this in XYZ amount of time. And, with all these different parameters. And so I would encourage anyone, as with anything, be it weight loss, write it down. So have a plan. I want to lose 10 pounds in 2 months. How are you going to do it? I'm going to implement XYZ. If you're going to implement keto, learn about keto, make certain it works for you, and just have that vision. Have it somewhere where you can see it so you're accountable to yourself. And if you need an accountability partner, do that as well, because people are going to make certain that you're doing the right thing and say, no, should you be eating that? Is that what you committed to? And going from there.
Community is a very powerful tool to change behavior. I love this. Write it down. Man, Kim, this has been great. You imparted so much wisdom today and so many behavior change techniques that I promote. And like you're hitting so many of them. And it's, I love saying, like, if you want to change your life, you literally have to change your life. Yep. And your life, judging by what you just shared with us, looks a lot different than what it used to look like. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
This has been really neat. And I've just really enjoyed getting to know you even better. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Thanks. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Please rate and review the podcast on the platform of your choice so we can reach more people and more people are recommended this podcast. And if you really liked it, the single best way you can help us grow is by telling your friends. Now, for all the legal stuff. The views and opinion expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. For my day job, I'm an employee of AbbVie and appear on this podcast on my own accord and not in the professional capacity as an AbbVie employee. All viewpoints provided are my personal opinions and not intended to reflect those of my employer. If you have any questions or comments, please shoot me an email at jolly@interrupthunger.org. Let's go spread some joy, people.